Hello, thank you for downloading Witness from the BBC World Service. I'm Rob Walker. Today we're going back to the 1830s and the story of 6 English farm workers who came to symbolise the struggle for the right to form trade unions. They became known as the Tolpuddle Martyrs.
They can bring down our wages, starve all our children. In chains they can bind us, steal all our land.
By the early months of 1834, tensions were rising in many parts of rural England.
I think the whole country was in a state of turmoil for all sorts of reasons. The Industrial Revolution was taking its effect not just in our cities but in our rural communities. Life was changing.
Nigel Costley is South West England Secretary of the British Trade Union Congress.
Living conditions would have been extremely harsh. The power in the land was still very much in the hands of an elite of the squires, the wealthy, the landowners.
And one change that was strengthening the hand of the landowners was the introduction of new threshing machines on farms. That meant fewer jobs for farm labourers, and it also meant that landowners began lowering wages, in some cases to starvation levels.
If you look at the register of Tolpuddle, horrific levels of child mortality, one after the other. You see on the register, it's rather confusing way that a James is then followed by another James, followed by another James. It's babies dying and the next baby being given the same name. And life was brutal, to say the least.
In the village of Tolpuddle in Dorset in the west of England, conditions were particularly harsh. In response, one farm labourer, 37-year-old George Lovelace, began trying to organise his fellow workers.
George Lovelace, he was a Methodist lay preacher, which would have meant that he would have preached outside fields, called hedge preachers. So he was a religious man, he was a law-abiding person, he was able to lead and inspire people.
We learnt that in almost every place around us, the masters were giving their men 10 shillings per week. We expected to be entitled to as much, but no, 9 shillings must be our portion.
This is from an account written by George Lovelace in 1837.
After some months, we were reduced to 8 shillings per week. From this time, we were reduced to 7 shillings per week, and, shortly after, our employers told us they must lower us to 6 shillings a week. We consulted together what had better be done, knowing it was impossible to live honestly on such scanty means.
Come, brothers, vote both far and near, and join our lodge in secret here. We must improve our laws, it's clear, or perish from starvation.
George Lovelace must have argued under the famous Tolpuddle tree. Let's form a union. This was happening across the country. Let's combine together. We'd have to do it in secret because we'd have to build up a level of support before our employers, our masters, found out.
By this point in the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution was well advanced. Workers in the cities had begun to organise in trade unions to try to improve their pay and conditions. But although unions were no longer illegal, many employers would still do whatever they could to prevent their workers joining them. George Lovelace knew the farm workers would have to act fast.
So in the houses across West Dorset, they were having evening meetings to recruit new members, and the recruitment would include quite a ceremony. You didn't have sort of contracts that you could actually hold people to. The idea was that you bound people by their word through an elaborate process of initiation, and you were asked to put your hand on a Bible while blindfold and promise to hold the secrets of the society.
But the local landowner, a man named James Frampton, soon heard about these oaths being taken. He knew there was no law he could use to stop the union forming, so he decided to consult the Home Secretary. And instead, they came up with the idea of using an old and obscure law that made taking secret oaths illegal. Squire Frampton then recruited a spy, a farm labourer who took the oath to join the union so that he could give evidence against George Lovelace and 5 other Tolpuddle men.
So they were arrested early one morning. The process of justice then moved very swiftly, and within a very short period of time they were brought to the court in Dorchester. You climb the narrow steps directly into the dock, where they would have faced the jury, the grand jury, the judge in all his regalia. It would have been quite frightening.
I thought to myself, there is no danger but we shall be found guilty, as we have a special jury for the purpose, selected from among those who are the most unfriendly towards us, the landowners. Under such a charge, from such a quarter, self-interest alone would induce them to say, guilty.
The judge was related to Squire Frampton, and so the sentence was very swiftly passed that they were guilty. The judge made it clear, really, that the crime was that they formed a union. The oath was almost just a device to get them. They had to be set an example of forming these societies.
And tell me about the sentence. What was the sentence?
The sentence was the harshest that could be handed down. 7 years transportation. It's a bit strange to us now. 7 years in Australia, that sounds like a bit of a treat. But in those days, of course, it would have been a life sentence. Very few people returned from transportation. And it was being shipped into slavery, brutal, harsh conditions.
As soon as the sentence was passed, I got a pencil and a scrap of paper and wrote the following lines. God is our guide. No swords we draw. We kindle not war's battle fires. By reason, union, justice, law, we claim the birthright of our sires. We raise the watchword liberty. We will be free.
Farewell to my family. It's now I must leave you. That far fatal shore, in chains we shall see. Although we are taken, do not be mistaken. As brothers in union, we shall be free.
He would have not known, as he was sailing off to Australia, the huge outpouring of protest that spread right across the country. Massive meetings, thousands of people gathering and signing petitions of protest against the unjust way that the Dorchester labourers had been treated.
And why do you think this caught the imagination so much?
If farm workers in Dorset couldn't even form a union, then the unions across the country would be crushed. The protests grow to a point where there's this massive demonstration in London. It frightened the government of the day, and I think the government realised that they needed to back down, and eventually a full and free pardon was given to all 6.
George Lovelace and the others, the Tolpuddle Martyrs as they became known, returned to England 3 years after their trial. All but one of them later emigrated to Canada, and George Lovelace died there in 1874 at the age of 77. He left a legacy that's celebrated every summer at a festival in the village of Tolpuddle.
The Tolpuddle story did establish the basic human right for people to form a union, not just in Britain but around the world, that this was now really a founding principle that ordinary people do have that right of association, the ability to form a trade union if they wish.
But they can't break the oath of a Tolpuddle man.
Nigel Costley of the Trade Union Congress was talking to me, Rob Walker, for Witness. The music is from Tolpuddle Man by Graham Moore. And for details of our complete range of downloads and our terms of use, just go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.
No, they can't break the oath of a Tolpuddle man.